Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's Space Engineers Plus Me, episode 32. I'm Enigmaeus, and today we've got a lot of stuff going on. We've got quite a number of things going on, quite a number of places that we're going to, ships that we're going to use, and disappointments that we'll experience along the way. Now, in the last episode, we were experimenting with stationary substations, basically just a really, really small construct that had a couple of light armor blocks, an ore detector, a reactor to power it, and a flight seat so that we could mesh with the grid and actually get the readings from the ore detector. And it was effective in the sense that we could place it, see if there was any ore nearby, pull it down very quickly, relocate, place it again. But it just seemed still that it would be much easier if we had the same thing on a ship. It would be, rather than all the building and the tearing down, just move it around. So that's what I did. I made the Celestial Citrus. It's just a silly ship. It didn't have to have a lot on it. It needed a power supply, so I gave it 2 reactors. It needed lights, because we're flying around on the moon, which is almost always dark. Actually, anywhere we go is almost always dark, so we had some lights. We had a pair of gyros, which made it so fast to turn that it was almost uncontrollable. We had a flight seat, we had an ore detector, and we had an antenna. The antenna allows us to see the ore points that it's indicating to us without being in the flight seat. That was kind of an important aspect that we had to kind of pin down. And then it was just a matter of flying around until we found the ore seams that we were looking for, marking the GPS, and coming back with our drill ship to extract the ore. Now, I found 2 more platinum seams, and when I brought the drill ship around to drill down to where they were and start extracting the platinum, what I found was hardly any platinum at all. They weren't even so much seams as they were little clouds, little wispy tendrils of platinum under, 50 to 60 meters of rock. It took far longer to drill down to them than it did to actually extract the platinum, and actually it was easier once we found the platinum to hop out of the drill ship and go around and manually drill it, because the drill ship was it's as wide as the drill is compared to your manual drill. It's still, you don't have the maneuverability to twist and turn and kind of follow the wisps and tendrils of platinum. We got very, very little platinum out of the 2 seams total. And the way that I was checking to make sure that we weren't missing the bulk of it, my concern was when you get down to this little seam and you find hardly anything, is that there's a larger seam and we're just looking at the edges of it. So I dug with my manual drill in all different directions, 15 pulses, which works out to about 15 meters. It seemed to be about a meter of rock we were removing with each pulse of the drill. Went in all different directions, found nothing. It was so disappointing, because we had this goal to find enough platinum to make 8 large ion thrusters. I don't know if we reached that goal. We won't find out for a while, because in addition to not finding much in the last 2 seams, it takes forever to process. So we couldn't get an accurate reading, so to speak, of how much platinum we had. I know we have at least 2 large ion thrusters worth of platinum so far, with a lot left to process, relatively speaking, despite the fact that the last 2 seams yielded maybe 8,000 liters worth total, which is 2 full spacesuits worth of platinum that we dug out, basically, out of those 2 seams. It was a little bit disappointing, and I realized at that point that for what we were getting out of our time on the moon, we would be better off moving somewhere else, specifically back down to the planet to start to work on our next major project. So we left the moon. We dismantled the Celestial Citrus before we even left the moon. It was quick to build, quick to dismantle, just get it out of the way, get the components into storage on the ship, get going. I left our mining ship basically fully assembled, not because I necessarily wanted to keep it, but just I didn't want to worry about pulling it apart yet. I left it docked on the Dauntless, and then as we were progressing through space back towards the planet, I noticed that our speed was dropping. And I looked at the mining ship sitting on the hull of the Dauntless, and you could see the thrusters going, because the thrusters were on, and between the thrusters and the gyros were firing the thrusters, trying to get the ship to stop, because it also had inertial dampeners on. So I had to get out of the Dauntless while it was moving because I didn't want to waste the hydrogen to slow it down to a stop. Get into the mining ship, turn off the thrusters, and then get back into the Dauntless so that I could continue to control it on its way back to the Earth-like planet, which was a little bit of a thing. I learned, for example, that if you are basically in a ship that's traveling at 100 meters per second and you are detached from that ship, in other words, you're in zero gravity, for example, using a jetpack, which was the case with us, that it's a little bit difficult to control, and the last thing that you ever want to do is turn on inertial dampeners, because you will watch your ship slowly pull away from you unless you are basically lined up precisely with it and moving in the direction that it is. But we managed to get it done. We managed to get into the mining ship, turn off the thrusters, get back into the Dauntless, and then resume the trip to Earth. But that wasn't all. You see, whenever it comes to things like pistons and rotors, when you think you've got them beat, when you think you've got everything under control, that's when they explode. And in case you missed it, we'll zoom in a little bit and see that that's when they explode. And if that wasn't clear enough, we'll zoom in one more time. When you think you've got it under control, that's when they explode. So I don't even know. I thought of a number of different things that may have caused that. The thrusters were off on the drill head. We had some thrusters on the drill head to try and help control it, and also help control the ship when you're flying it, because the weight of the drill head would otherwise make it a little bit difficult to control in a gravity well situation. The gyros were off because when they're on, they're controlling the rotation of the drill head. The rotor was turned off because that's what was keeping the drill head from just kind of flopping around and turning. If the rotor was on, it would have just been free spinning. There would have been no torque applied to it. So it just, I think, is one of those things where the game is trying to calculate different forces being applied to different things, and the rotor thought that it was something, and boom. So that was the mining ship, basically the front end torn out of it. I thought it was kind of amusing in terms of the materials that I lost. It wasn't significant in terms of the importance of the mining ship and having it in good shape when we got back down to the planet. Didn't really matter. So all in all, it was kind of a chuckle that I had watching the damn thing explode, even though I'll probably never understand exactly why it did that. Now, I had about 25% full hydrogen tanks when I left the moon's orbit, which to me I was hoping was enough, because when we were leaving the Earth-like planet, we had a little over 50% in most of the tanks, and the newest 6 out of 18 tanks were a little bit less. They hadn't been refilling for as long, and we had to basically burn the thrusters to get out of the Earth-like planet's gravity well. Even though for the last half, I would say we were pulsing it and then just kind of waiting until we dropped speed a little bit and then pulse it again. So we were trying to conserve fuel that way. But it seemed at the time that it would take very little fuel for us, for example, when leaving the moon, to actually get up to speed towards the Earth-like planet. Very little fuel to make adjustments to our course as we were approaching the Earth-like planet. And then if we free fall through the atmosphere, roughly where we want to be going and landing on the planet, and then just in the last few thousand meters apply the thrusters to slow our descent and kind of keep things under control, I was hoping that we would have enough fuel in order for this whole thing to come together. And of course, if you remember on our trip to the moon, we were just about to land. We were so close to landing and we ran out of fuel, and we crashed a bunch of times before we realized we weren't going to be able to land. We were just down to the wire, and it wasn't in our favor. It wasn't going to be any different getting down to the Earth-like planet. 600 meters above the ice lake that I had chosen as our landing point, we ran out of fuel, and the ship plummeted down to the surface, bounced off of it way up into the air, and then landed again. Hardly any damage. This is the thing. All 3 landing gears were intact, even though all 3 of them hit the surface really hard. All of the hull plates that I that we took a look at after we got out of the ship. After it was landed, we got out, we went and we took a look around. I didn't see any damage on any of the light armor blocks on the underside of the ship. None of the thrusters were destroyed. None of the lights on the underside were destroyed. It was basically perfectly intact. A 7.5 million kilogram ship landing hard on the surface of an ice lake. Not a scratch. That's how it goes. But a mining ship with a drill head traveling through space with inertia at 100 meters per second blows up. I'll take it. Because if I had to choose between landing with the mining ship intact but a giant chunk out of the Dauntless and what we got, I'll take what we got. That's not going to be a problem. So between now and the next episode, I'm going to head back to the original ice lake, I think, and I'm going to finish dismantling the, what's very little is left of the Blue Behemoth air module. We just have some storage containers and some machines that we'll pull apart. I think I've got about 1,000 kilograms of uranium ingots actually in a small storage container. That's probably the most valuable thing to recover from that whole operation. And then we're going to load up the termite. I'm trying to think of the ship names. The termite and the canary onto the mantis and see if we can't fly the mantis back to the new ice lake. Not because I want to set up the mantis, but because there's materials there that we can recover for the next major project, which is going to be another rover. We're going to try and do another rover because there's a lot that we can take a look at in terms of the wheels and the customizability options on the wheels for different scenarios and different kinds of terrain and all these other things. And also because I want our next ship to be very, very versatile for our first interplanetary trip. We're going to be heading to the Mars-like planet next. And when we get there, I want to be able to do as much as possible without having to build any more additional facilities or whatever, so that we can build additional facilities that are just for fun. We can do some things that are useful, but also aesthetic kinds of things and moving parts and different kinds of things that do different kinds of things, but without having to worry too much about having to get set up with facilities that serve specific purposes, because sometimes that actually becomes a limiter. We'll go down with everything we need to get started, gather stuff, process stuff, build stuff, and then we'll start building things on the Mars-like planet, and we'll go from there. So if you want to be notified when I add those videos in the future, you can subscribe to my channel. You can follow me on social media. Links for social media are always in the information box below the video. Feel free to leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.